Good evening. It's evening for me now. It will hopefully not be evening when I post this. See, I started my last video with good morning in the intention that it would be posted in the morning, and that didn't happen. So maybe if I say good evening in my video, it'll actually go up when it's supposed to. Welcome to Melinden TV. Today I wanted to do a video for people who are trying to get into running. And at the same time, also kind of tell my story a little bit about how I came to be a runner. And for anyone that wants to become a runner and work their way up to a marathon, what intermediate race distances I recommend to get there. So let's do that. Don't judge me, I have a headache. So quick story about how I got into running. It was a complete accident. I never ran in middle school or high school, never did track, never did cross country, never did any organized sports. I did sports for fun, but I wasn't really an athlete. I jogged on a treadmill for about an hour a day while Gilmore Girls was on TV because I was chubby and I wanted to lose weight, and then I got busy and I stopped doing that. And I hadn't exercised in years when it was my senior year of college, and I was in this organization at Rutgers, my school, and all of the organizations that are funded by Rutgers are encouraged to support each other. So our faculty advisor told us that we all had to get involved with this 5K that Rutgers organizes every year. It's called Big Chill. And she said you either have to walk it, or you have to run it, or you have to fundraise for it, or you have to volunteer. Like, you have to support the other Rutgers events, and everyone has to get involved. And most of the people on the executive committee were going to walk it together, and there was one person who was like, please, will someone run it with me? And nobody would do it. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And I had never run a race before, but I said, hey, let's give it a try. And I wanted to take it seriously, so I went online and I downloaded a 5K training plan. And I trained for 5 weeks, and I really busted my butt. And in the process, I came across a whole bunch of races that seemed really cool, and a whole bunch of race distances that I thought about trying. And when the day came, I ran the race, and I fell so hard in love with the idea of picking a goal, training for that goal, and then actually reaching it, that I went home the same day and registered for my next race. So in this video, I'd like to talk about the intermediate distances that I ran while getting from a 5K to a marathon, and tell you a little bit about my first races of each distance. So the first race I ever ran in my life is, like I mentioned, Big Chill. And that one is organized by Rutgers University every year, and it's in New Brunswick. And it takes place in December, usually the first week. And instead of paying a price to register, you have to donate a new unwrapped toy. And they make sure that those toys get to kids who can't really afford them. And then any money that's raised by the event goes toward buying winter coats for kids who can't afford them. Pretty cool. Really nice course. A lot of the community gets involved, and it's part of the reason why I fell in love with running. And I remember the first year that I ran it, I didn't even opt to buy the timing chip. So they said that you could, if you really cared about your time, you could get the timing chip, and you would get an official time, and then you were in the running for prizes and stuff. And I was like, forget that, I ain't fast. I'm just trying to finish and run the whole thing. There were thousands of people who ran it that day, and I'm not even listed among the results. but I know I did it, and I'm really proud that I did it because I worked so hard to get to that point. And now I run that race every year as long as there isn't another conflict in my schedule. And I've actually placed a couple of times, which is pretty rad considering the first time I ever ran that race. I sat there listening to the people as the awards were being given out. And I was like, wow, that's really fast. I'll never be that fast. I'll never place at a race like this. And I did. Second race I ever ran was the 6K distance. 6K is 3.7 miles, which I probably should have said 5K is 3.1 miles. For any of my viewers that are from the US, which is maybe all of you. So I originally signed up for a 6K, and it got canceled like not long before the event. Like, I was already in the process of training for it when it got canceled, so I had to find a replacement 6K, and I couldn't find a 6K exactly. A 6K is 3.7 miles, and the race that I found is 3.6. It's a really off race distance, but it's really nice to have small intervals when you're just beginning running, because then it's not an overwhelming further distance to train for. Going from 3.1 miles to 3.7 miles didn't seem super overwhelming, but making the jump to 4 seemed like a lot to do. So the race that I ran for my 6K was called Aroma Time Vintage Run, and it was a wine-themed race, which they encouraged people to wear grape colors. And at the finish line, you went into this little bistro, and they gave you a sampling glass, and you drank wine, which, honestly, wine and running are still two of my favorite things. So what more could you want in a race? I ended up only doing this one once because it was dumb far, and by dumb far, I mean like 2 hours away. But I really did enjoy it. I ran it with a friend, and that was our first race running together, which was pretty cool because we ended up really bonding over running in the future. The third race I ran was the 4-mile distance, and the one that I chose was called Run for the River. Run for the River is in Asbury, which is Warren County, New Jersey. And it is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of this river association, but it's cool because the race is adjacent to the river in that area. It starts and ends at this fire station, and one of the most exciting things about this race is that they make it like a community thing. It's like a family day. They have hot air balloon rides. They have free stuff from vendors, and they have a raffle. And you don't have to buy anything to get into the raffle. Your bib number is your raffle number. So as long as you're there when they're giving away prizes, you have a very good chance of winning a thing. And I've done this race a few times, and I've won a few prizes. The first year I didn't win anything, but the second year I went, I won a water bottle and a portable battery for your phone or your devices, whatever. And then the following year, I won a gift certificate, like a $50 gift certificate to a salon in that area, which is rad. And then I think the last year I did it, I won this giant box of different variants of M&Ms, and I'm not going to tell you how long it took for me to finish it, at the fear of being judged. But that is another race that, even though it's kind of far-ish, like an hour-ish away from me, that's one that I try to do every year as long as it fits into my schedule, just because I think it's a really cool course. And low-key, that's the first race I ever placed at. I got third place in my age group. Were there only 3 people in my age group? Maybe. I don't know. Never checked. I don't want to know. But I will tell you that a few years ago I got first place female overall, and the fact that that happened is like... The fourth race I ever ran was the 8K distance. And the one that I ran was Swarthmore Lions Independence Eve. And it was supposed to be run on Independence Eve, you know, Independence Day. But I don't remember why they canceled it. I remember being really angry because I was running it with a friend and the two of us were already on the road. We were driving there. It was in Pennsylvania, which I live in New Jersey. So it was a little bit of a hike for us. And we found out that it was canceled while we were in the car on the way there. Really disappointed. And then it got postponed for 2 weeks. So we did go back and we ran it. And then the 5th race I ever ran was a 5-miler. Now, let me tell you the difference between 8K and 5 miles. 8K is 4.97 miles. So you really don't have to do both distances, the 8K and the 5-miler. But I did, because it's really only a matter of... Wow, I'm so mad because I just jabbered through explaining like 3 races and then realized that my camera wasn't recording. So I'm going to talk about those 3 races again while my husband gets me a refill on my wine. Moving on to my next race distance, it's the 10K, which you'll probably not have a lot of trouble finding. It's one of the more common race distances. A 10K is 6.2 miles. And the one that I chose was the New York City Trail Festival. And this one was really cool because for a few reasons, one of which is there were several different race distances that you could do. So there was a 10K, there was a 25K, and a 50K, which I did the 10K because Lord knows I wasn't ready for the other 2. I'm still not ready for a 50K. So that was one thing. Another thing was it was my first trail run ever, which I highly recommend if you're getting into running, just do at least one trail run. Your time is going to be slower and it's going to be a little bit more challenging because trail runs are usually more winding, more hilly. You have to watch your footing because there's rocks and roots. You may or may not get lost. I think I've gotten lost every trail run I've ever run in my life ever. But it's really rewarding because it's beautiful, it's scenic, it's very interesting. And another thing about this particular race is trail runs usually have the best post-race food. So usually you go to a race and at the finish line there's like a banana and an orange and a bagel and some bottles of water. When I say this race had real, like, legit food, I'm talking like penne vodka, Italian wedding soup, garlic bread, to date, the best race food I have ever had. I went back and I did this one again, and I was like, I want to do this one every year. Unfortunately, they don't have it anymore, and I don't know why, but I'm really upset about it. The next race distance that I did is 12K, and 12K is 7.5 miles. The race I did was Xterra Brandywine Creek. That was another trail run. And then the race I did after that was a 15K, which is 9.3 miles, and that was another trail run. And something that you'll find is that there are certain races that it's easy to find races near you in a distance. I mean, depending on where you live, but I live in the tri-state area, so it's really easy to find races in certain distances. But for the off distances like 6K, 8K, 12K, 15K, you don't really find a lot of road races in those distances, and you'll find trail runs in those off distances because they're kind of like a novelty. So this one in particular was called Double Trouble because their shtick was... this was another one that you could choose which distance you wanted to do. You could do the 15K or you could do the 30K. And I did the 15K. I just want to point out that I did it with a friend and I beat him by 10 minutes. Then the next race I did was a 10-mile race, which is a huge milestone in running. Really exciting. The race that I did was called Evansburg Challenge. Then the next race distance that I did was a 20K, which is 12.4 miles. And you notice that now the interval of miles between races is kind of jumping, because at this point, I've been running for almost 2.5 years at this point. And so in the beginning, like a jump of a quarter mile felt like a lot. But when you really get into running and do multiple races and you get farther and farther, a jump of like 3 miles seems doable. So the 20K that I did, it was called Miles for Music, and it was cool because it was local, and it was also cool because the money raised went to music education. The next race I did was a half marathon, and this is a big race distance. This is a huge milestone race distance, and honestly, one of the most common race distances you'll find. It is also my personal favorite race distance. A half marathon is just long enough to still be a challenge, even if you're a seasoned runner, but it is short enough that you can still complete it, even if you're walking part of it. I love half marathons, and I think there are some really, really fun ones out there. The one that I did, for example, was called Odyssey, and I messed up so bad for this half marathon, and I feel like this needs to be its own video, but long story short, I overslept on the morning of this half marathon and started the race an hour late, and I went to the site and was like, I still want to run this, please let me run this. And he said, okay, the race director was like, okay, you run at your own risk though, because they already started breaking down water stops and stuff. And I missed out because this particular race, it was called Odyssey, like with odd, ODD, in capital letters, because they had tasks for you to do along the way, like life-size Connect 4 and life-size beer pong, and people wore costumes, and I missed out on a lot of that stuff because I started late. But I still ran it. I completed my first half marathon, and I hope that someday, I know that they changed the name and now they call it something else now, but I'd really like to go back one day and redo that half marathon and actually experience it the way I was supposed to the first time. The next distance that I did was a 25K, which is 15.5 miles, and this one was called Mountain Madness, which you can tell by the name that this one was another trail run, and this one was another one that had different race options of distance. So this one you could have done a 7K, a 25K, or a 50K, and I was at the 25K level at that point. This one, I got so very lost. I got so very lost that I just ran into this dad and daughter in the woods, and I was like, help, have you seen any other people like me running through the woods with just help me find them. And they were like, yeah, we saw a water station, and they took me back to this water station that I had passed like a mile and a half ago. It was a mess. Besides that, the course was marked wrong, and the course was actually like 2 miles longer than advertised. I was not ready for that race. But it was such a beautiful course that I actually went back and did it again. And hey, I got lost that time too. But that is also one of my favorite post-race spreads because it was an ultra, because they have a 50K distance. They had everything there. They had Uncrustables and jelly beans and different kinds of sodas and juices and candies and cookies. They had all of the goodies. at the water stops. And there were only a couple of water stops, and they were more like stations for the people who were running the 50K, because that's a really decent amount of mileage. But everyone who was running was welcome to the treats. And that's another race that whenever I have the opportunity, I like to do that one also. Okay, second to last race before my first marathon, my penultimate race before my marathon, and that is the 30K distance. And this one was a little bit harder to find in the time frame that I wanted to run it. And this was my first travel race. Like, before this race, I had never traveled more than like 2 hours for a race. My 30K, I went all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida to run. I brought 2 friends with me. One of them ran with me, one of them didn't. A 30K is 18.6 miles, which honestly, if you would have told me when I first started running that I'd be able to run 18 miles without stopping, I would have told you you're absolutely insane. But it's something that what I'm trying to show through this video is that you can work up to it, and you can take a few months or you can take a few years like I did. And we made a runcation out of it, and we went to Jacksonville, Florida, went for a week, had a great time, to date one of my favorite vacations, and I ran this race. And I was in a lot of pain afterwards, but it is one of my favorite race experiences. And what was cool was that all of the money raised went to this children's hospital. And that was another race that had multiple distance options. They also had a relay option, which I wasn't into at the time, but I would try it now that I've surpassed that distance. And then last but not least, the distance that I was working up to. Is that you, James? I hate you so much. You know I'm filming. The only person who ever texts me is you.
You have friends.
No, I don't.
I love you.
Glug, 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 glug. Wow, there was not a lot of wine left. So the final race distance, the one that I was working my way up to ever since I started running, I said I'm starting with a 5K and I am working my way up to a marathon, and I'm never going farther than that. The first marathon I ever did is the Great Wall Marathon. Yeah, legit, the Great Wall Marathon in the actual China. I remember coming across this marathon in my very, very early running phases, when I'm pretty sure I couldn't even run a mile without stopping. And I heard of this race, and I was like, you get to run on the actual Great Wall in China? Gotta do it. That's gotta be my first marathon. I hadn't even run a 5K yet. And I was like, I want this to be my first marathon. And 3.5 years after I started running, my best friend and I booked plane tickets, and we went to China, and we ran the Great Wall Marathon on the actual Great Wall of China. Do I recommend doing that race? So, absolutely. Do I recommend doing that race as your first marathon? No, don't do it. I did it, but don't do it. It was hard. It was really hard. There were tears. There was pain. I was sore for a month. But absolutely put that one on your bucket list. It was amazing. So anyway, since then, I have come up with even more goals to do. So originally, I had this list of, 14 races that I wanted to do, starting with a 5K and gradually working my way up to a marathon. Realistically, if you're in decent shape, you can work your way up from a 5K to a marathon in a year, maybe less, depending on what shape you're in and your running background. But I took the scenic route. I wanted to hit all of these race distances in between, and I'm glad I did, because it made me it helped me get to experience a lot of different race styles. It helped me to travel, and it helped me to develop my race etiquette. There were a lot of people that were running that marathon that you could tell didn't run a lot of races, and it was kind of annoying to run around them because just little things that like people who do races know, like when you want to pass someone, you say on your left, and then if you hear someone behind you say on your left, you let them go past you. And if you don't do races often, that might not be something that you know. But anyway, I'm glad I hit all those races in between, and I just really enjoyed my journey from not being a runner at all to now being a multiple marathon runner. And what I found out was that for every goal race I reached, I felt like I set 3 more of them. And now I have enough goal races to keep me running for the rest of my life. So to recap, if you are trying to work your way up to a marathon from not being a runner at all, here are the race distances that I hit that I recommend you hit. 5K, 6K, 4 miles, 8K, 5 miles, 10K, 12K, 15K, 10 miles, 20K, half marathon, 25K, 30K, and marathon, which is 26.2 miles. Now, if you don't want to take the scenic route and you really just want to couch to marathon it up, here is the fast track recommendation of the races I think you should hit. You should definitely do a 5K. There's plenty of them around. You should definitely do a 10K. If you can, do a 10 miler. Definitely do a half marathon. And then you can really, really work hard and get up to a marathon. And absolutely fall in love with running. Never stop setting goals for yourself. I never did. So remember when I said that I wanted to work my way up to a marathon and then never go farther than that? In July, I just ran 35 miles at a race. What? I made the goal of running a marathon in each state, a marathon on each continent. In January, I'm running the Walt Disney World Dopey Challenge, which is a 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon over the course of 4 days. Oh my God, I'm a mad woman. I'm a crazy person. But it's because I took the scenic route and I let myself develop this gradual love for running, this gradual love for setting goals and reaching them. Thank you for watching this video. Remember that I put out new videos. I feel like I shouldn't say that on camera. Remember that I make new videos. I post new videos. I post new videos on the first Wednesday of every month. Please, please, please subscribe. I've got some really fun videos coming up that I'm super excited about. I'll see you guys next time.